Here.
Okay. It's a very personal heavy user of Porn 2.0 or stuff uploaded by other people onto Xhamster, RedTube, Tumblr and such, whether in pictorial or video form, that generally we think that, I'm sorry, anything about this, generally we think that the harms in terms of in terms of morality, in terms of to individual people, in terms of to the users, far outweigh any possible good that can be done as compared to if these particular things were to not exist. Let's start with some context in the first place. We think that at large, such forms of porn are popular because users, whether they are people who consume or generate this porn, think it's more real, think it's more true, think it's more visceral. We think this is highly analogous to the rise of reality TV in such that audiences believe that these things are somehow more real, that these things are somehow more believable, that what they are seeing is well and truly reality. Akin to a form of dramatic documentation or documentary that Sir David Attenborough will be narrating, but with regard to porn. At large then, we think that the comparative here lies not with regard to how porn is generally harmful, but on the first level, how checks and balances in normal porn ensure that things don't get too far out of hand. That secondly, also, has far greater implications of real life than normal porn does. Which brings us then to the first substantive, in terms of norm creation. Now here's the thing. This porn, let's just admit, comes from the grassroots. These are, in a sense, to some extent, normal people creating what appears to be normal porn. And thus, the consumers, again, this is what they seek, the so-called amateur experience, or the so-called girl next door. What they are looking for is for what appears to be normal. However, we don't think this is necessarily the case. At large, we believe that what happens is that people do try to pander firstly to what is already normal, and such they reinforce things that already are normal, and hence it ekes out and eats away at the fringes of what we would consider real liberty in terms of the full expansion of what constitutes as good, enjoyable sex that ought to be shared, that ought to be experienced. But again, we think that this has further implications for commercial porn, because now the new niche, assuming that there is a certain normal mainstream that is being portrayed by amateur porn or Porn 2.0 as uploaded by so-called great society, that at large then, the niche that continues to exist for commercial porn is to do things that so-called normal people would not do. Meaning that there's going to be a shift, or that is already occurring, a shift in the baseline of what constitutes as normal and mainstream towards abuse and extreme porn, towards pornography that normal people or supposedly would not do in the commercial world. And we also have to understand that the commercial world does admittedly still retain its ability to advertise, still does retain the higher production values that a lot of people do subscribe and do patronize. And that's why we think at large then, it's going to be harmful even for the people who don't consume Porn 2.0, because at large then, the niche and the shift of the mainstream is heavily going to be geared towards types of sex that are increasingly more violent and increasingly more destructive for people. Things such as gangbangs, orgies, false orgasms, or extremely heavy BDSM. Now, we can't say then, and we say again that this is further harmful in direct and immediate means, because these things, again, cannot be safely practiced by normal people, or most people can't do these sort of things, like submerging yourself in a water tank while being forced to come from a Sibian. Here's the thing then, at large we think there's immediate harm from people attempting to emulate these things in normal porn, and for that matter, replicating these things and trying to post it online as an amateur form of it. The second substantive then we have to talk about is about the reinforcement of further pernicious harms. This preempts any sort of substantive we think that's going to come up from side opposition in terms of liberalization of or empowerment ability of such pornography. We think at large firstly that participants are of a particular subset likely to be on the side of red pills and MRAs, because firstly at large they pander to their own normal patriarchal norms, and they pander to their audience's normal patriarchal norms, which at large again means that we are not likely to see the so-called full benefits of sex empowerment for women. We therefore think that there's going to be a reinforcement of traditional gender roles, assuming that simply statistically that traditional gender roles are what the majority of most societies have today, that this is going to be reflected again in the type of porn that's going to be produced from Porn 2.0 producers, meaning that statistically they are creating, replicating and reinforcing what is already out there currently in society. And that's why we again don't think that any greater empowerment or liberalization is going to occur. But we think more importantly that they reinforce the norms of voyeurism and the lack of concern for privacy and the lack of concern for consent. Because many a time, as we've seen already from the precedent of cases such as revenge porn, that at large, many of these people really don't care what their partners think. Many of these people don't film and publish with their partner's consent. And we think that's really, really bad. And at large, we cannot punish or capture these people who create the content. We can punish the people who host the content, but that's the limit of it. We cannot actually go down there and tell them that these particular things are bad, that these particular things are harmful, and that you have to and should stop doing them. Moreover, we think that at large, the mainstream porn industry has contractual and union-based protections and reputations of studios at large, such as Kink.com, that ensure that abuses or consent is something that's heavily taken care of, or even society's own willingness to criticize mainstream porn actors, as we've already seen in the case of James Dean being heavily criticized the moment someone came out and talked about him. The problem is such checks and balances do not exist in the world of porn 2.0. Before I move on, yes?
Where is a prostitute treated better? When she has a pimp forcing her to do things, or when she has some measure of autonomy over herself?
Okay, here's the thing. The pimps in these particular cases, such as in Germany, are entirely legalized, entirely regulated as an industry as opposed to being an independent streetwalker. And that's why we don't think that being an anonymous, so-called autonomous streetwalker is going to be better for you. Because even if you don't have a pimp, you're more likely to suffer harms from your customers and to yourself than if it was a fully regulated industry with unions, with checks and balances, with contracts, such as we see in places such as Germany and Scandinavia. Finally then, on immediate direct harms to individuals. We have already talked about privacy infringement in a certain touch-and-go fashion. However, we think that many a time, the things that people enjoy in terms of voyeuristic porn 2.0 is an actual rise in the cases of people trying to pander to their audiences, in the cases of people being peeping toms, in the cases of videoing people for upskirts, their neighbors, their family, or whatnot, in actually infringing people's privacy. But more importantly than that, we think at a partner level, it means that in order to push a greater extreme and get an even greater amount of approval or money, it doesn't really matter, that at large it means pushing and coercing one's partners into doing things to satisfy their audience rather than themselves or their relationship. It means at large producing porn with your partner and forcing them into a corner towards greater and greater extremes that we think are highly detrimental to individual liberties and to a good sex in general. For all these reasons, go with OG.
Here, here. And now call upon the right honorable leader of opposition to deliver their speech. Here, here.
What are we not debating? Because I think that's quite important. What we're not debating, A, is the issue of consent, because all of the 2.0 websites require user content to have both-sided consent in order for it to be uploaded. If they're talking about kind of things which break the law, then again we would point to the fact that also under mainstream you have these kind of places where these are breached, and we can deal with them, and I'll be talking about regulation in slightly more time. The other thing that we need to discuss is what we are talking about, and this is a comparative. Because porn isn't going anywhere, right? And everything that we understand from opening government needs to be understood in the context of porn 2.0 versus just having regular porn staying around. So when they talk about issues of fringe and whether or not there was a bit of confusion about whether there would be fringe or wouldn't be fringe, we have to discuss it. We have to think about the fact that fringe aspects get taken better understood under our side. Wow, that's really bad. Never mind, guys. We're going on from here. What we're going to be talking about is something quite simple. We're going to be looking at two different issues. We're going to be looking at why porn is better for the participants, and we're going to be looking about also why it's better for the viewers at large. Before going into that, a few little points of refutation. So A, the issue of regulation. Here's a couple of things we don't understand. A, we don't understand why regulation doesn't exist for the porn 2.0. In fact, it does. And most of the things that they were talking about how we have self-regulation, right, are all kind of things which exist under the models of 2.0 when you have big websites, right, with their reputations who have user-uploaded content and need to look over and see the videos that are being uploaded. And if they have a bad, and if a video is uploaded there which is problematic, which breaks consent, then they lose their reputation. No, thank you. In the exact same way that they're talking about the big industries. If they're saying that neither people really care that much about that, which we say is, probably true, true, then that's a problem on both sides of the house. The other thing that we need to talk about is the issue of norm creation. Because here what we say is that first we would like them to be a little bit clear, because at the beginning they say, well, 2.0 won't really allow any kind of fringe things because it's just catering to the mainstream audience. And then they say, oh wait, no, but they'll go to all these fringe things. But here is the problem with their case. They say they will go to the fringe, which will be violent. We have no clue why fringe means violence. We don't know why violent things are necessarily the things that people necessarily want to create in fringe pornography. We would say that all of the examples they bring, such as BDSM and gangbanging, are very much part of mainstream pornography, which exists today. We don't know why people who have slightly different sexual orientations are violent. And we think that's something which is a bit problematic when it comes to analysing this side of the house. So now let's go on to the issues of why it is that we get why participants are better able to express themselves and to deal with the issues in porn. Because what we're doing here is we are removing the pimps from the equation. Now what we hear from this is, well, look, porn is so well regulated. I mean, there's no possible way that there could be any harm in that. Oh wait, James Dean, the very example that they bring up, right? Porn, under the hierarchy of big, powerful, rich men controlling the industry, having workers coming in who necessarily are of a poorer nature, right, a lot of the time, because at least at the entry level, because most of the people who go to porn and go to the industry aren't necessarily the most well-educated as they put out, aren't necessarily the richest people. These are the kind of people who are necessarily imbalanced when they come to the kind of writing contracts or creating any kind of, or enforcing their contracts once it's taken to place. No thanks. And you can have all the regulation you want in the world to kind of deal with this, but then what you get is the fact that James Dean, it's great that we now know about this, but it was going on for years that he was raping women who were working for him, and it was being hushed up by their bosses in order to allow this to continue. And these are the kind of things which happen on a day-to-day basis inside the porn industry, and they will continue to happen inside an industry where you have such massive imbalance between employers and employees. This isn't a regulation problem. This is a structural problem of porn, the mainstream porn industry. Why do we change that? Because what we do here is we remove these pimps from the equation. The people are now creating the content themselves. This means that they are less likely to be forced into doing the sexual acts that they do not want to participate in, which can be so problematic, no thanks, they can be so problematic that we think basically verge on rape, because at the end of the day, they now have the choice whether or not they want to or don't want to create this content and put it up. And we say, one sec. And we say that at this point, what we're allowing people to do is make choices when they are most vulnerable, when they are exposing themselves to the wider world. They are now the people who get to make this choice, and they don't have a direct outside force of a producer or a director forcing them to do things they would rather not. Second.
Okay, how do you explain the rapid growing of feminist porn regardless of the internet?
The rapid growth of feminist porn regardless of the internet. I think that's great. I'm not sure why that's so. I think that's great. And I'm going to be analysing why 2.0 helps out feminist porn, because we all love feminism. So what we're talking about here, is the fact that the kind of content that is being produced is the people involved are far more likely to be vulnerable under this side of the house. Now, what else is we get a better benefit for the viewers as well. Addressing also what's been said about feminism, because there are two things that we need to discuss here. The first is the issue of realism versus perception, because what they say, and they say this about norms, is, well, people see things and they see it as normal and then they want to do it in themselves at home, and we don't necessarily think that this is how people react when seeing media. We would say that realism is not necessarily what leads to emulation. Like when we see stuff on the video, it's what it's what shapes the kind of norms and the kind of when we see things on screens, it shapes the kind of norms and the kind of abilities that we want to do. Now, this doesn't matter whether or not I'm seeing a superhero flick. Many people want to go out and be a superhero and entrench themselves in the kind of norms that are being talked about here. But what we do get under this side of the house is that people are seeing regular people, regular Joes. They're not just seeing people with perfect body images. They're not just seeing the perfect sexual acts which have been decided for. They're seeing regular people. We think this has a great benefit for the people watching it in the kind of body images that they have. We think this is the counterbalance to a lot of the negative body images that people have. But we also think that the issues of sexual expression are incredibly important, because we think minorities get far better representation on this side of this house. A, because of women, because many of the people controlling the porn industry are men, and also because of minority groups, because the kind of people who we're talking about here, who need to cater to large industries, are people who necessarily go for the largest target audience. That means they don't go for the kind of fringe sexual expressions we think is incredibly important. And we think when people go online and they think they have a sexual deviancy and they don't find any porn out there which is anywhere close to them, they feel really bad about themselves. And Aiton's going to go on a little bit more in that in the future. Thank you very much.
Here, I think that's speaker for that speech, and now call upon the deputy leader, the deputy prime minister for the next switch around here.
Mr. Speaker, this debate is ultimately about two things. First of all, it's about what Porn 2.0 is really like and how that shapes expectations within society. And second of all, it's about what eventually happens to the commercial pornography industry when free aggregate websites funded primarily by advertisements drive out commercial profit-making enterprises, causing them to lower their profits and in doing so, lower their labor standards, lower their regulation, and increase competition, pushing them to ever-fringe taboo methods of production that are far worse for both workers and viewers, and that's going to be the bulk of my case for today. First of all, let's do some characterization about how people are actually influenced by media. I think my partner does a fairly good job where he tells you that media works in a bidirectional manner. Even as it reflects societal structures, it also reproduces them, especially when we're talking about something that looks fairly realistic but might not actually be. So when opening opposition tries to tell us that people can watch realistic stuff without necessarily buying into the problematic norms that create it, we just don't think that's true. Second of all, we think that this characterization is especially important in pornography because of the lack of competing narratives about sex in the form of a lack of sexual education or open discourse during individuals' formative years. As a result, most of the information and discourse surrounding sex is indeed driven by the pornography industry, which is why we think the harms on our side are particularly large. 2 points of substantive material for you today. First of all, on the impact of the pornography industry, and second of all, about norms shaping. Rebuttal will be interwoven. Okay, so first of all, on the impact on the pornography industry. Mr. Speaker, the pornography industry is one in which raw market forces reign. We think that in a place where everything goes for pornography, everything also gets reproduced. And we think it has a few particular impacts on the commercial porn industry that are particularly problematic. First of all, it drives down the ability for commercial pornography to make money. I know opening opposition thinks this is a super good thing because we can cut out pimps who are so terrible. Here's the problem. We think that this is, first of all, bad for the performers that exist within the commercial porn industry. We understand there are always some iffy issues of consent that go on with the individuals that opt into the pornography industry. We still think it's far better for those people who opt in to have better working standards and higher wages than their wages, which have now been depressed from $1,500 an hour on average to $500 an hour, just because commercial porn sites can no longer, and studios can no longer make the same sort of money they were making. This means there's thousands more people who originally had jobs and livelihoods, even if they were meager by opening opposition standards, are now unprovided for or worse provided for. Because of the second reason, which is that the porn industry itself is shrinking. A $40 billion industry has gone down by 3/4 in the past decade. The porn studios in America have gone from 200 to 20. Opening opposition thinks this is great. Here's why it's bad. Commercial pornography therefore produces ever more extreme pornography to survive, because you drive down the pool of competition and ensure they're competing not just with other commercial studios that do actually have standards and regulations and labor union codes in place, but also with amateur pornographers who have none of the same checks and balances. Opening opposition rests their entire case about regulation on, if you love your partner, of course you provide for them, which just seems to disregard all this shit about revenge pornography, which are websites that explicitly host pornography without the other party's consent. So if they try to say you need both parties' consent to upload things to Xhamster or whatever, that's just simply not true. We think commercial producers have far more checks and balances than amateur pornographers. Third of all, it actually drives out smaller commercial producers and commercial studios. The feminist pornography they want to see produced on their side. We're talking about things like Vivia Entertainment or like Evil Angels or something. We're also talking about producers like Buck Angel, Dana Dane, Madison Young, and Erica Lust in Spain. All women directors and filmmakers who have explicitly pushed an agenda of getting more female sexual empowerment out into the pornography industry. We're talking about studios who see sexual representation as resistance, and we think this is particularly important. Why? Because feminist pornography producing commercial studios make an explicit aim to ensure that they emphasize the importance of labor standards in the production and the treatment of their performance. Guess what? These things all take money because labor standard enforcement take money. Paying producers well takes money rather than cutting corners and doing really slipshod work that ensure you don't care about your workers at all. So if opening opposition wants to talk about driving out commercial studios as being good, we would actually say you drive out the smaller studios in most need of funding, pushing the most liberal kinds of agenda like feminist pornography studios, and ensuring that the workers there get far worse standards. So there's 3 impacts from this plot. First of all, you ensure workers get paid less. Second of all, you ensure they're treated worse. And third of all, you drive out liberal pornography studios. Second of all, let's talk about norms. We think in the context in which people watch these porn films are particularly important, right? Because I've already told you about how you're brought up understanding that sex with the norm of pornography. So here are the 2 types of amateur porn that are likely to be on Xhamster. First of all, with unknowing parties. It's not true about consent, like I've already told you. But even if it was true that both parties have to consent, then at best it's a wash, right? Because at worst, on their side, it's a case where the mirage of a relationship actually covers up the imbalance of power, because honestly, no relationship is ever truly equal. Second of all, we think that in this case, the other type of porn that happens is when you're pandering to certain unrealistic expectations. So that's what happens when both parties consent on their side. So in the first place, they don't get the same impacts they want about porn being super realistic and changing body images, because as they themselves said, people want to play to the largest target audience possible. This means they pander to unrealistic expectations. This means they operate within patriarchal norms that have been dictated by society and by regular commercial porn studios that they are so opposing. So what gets watched? We don't think it's porn about minorities, right? Even if they put it out there. What gets watched probably mirrors the exact same thing that already happens. But at least on our side, we have some level of regulation as well in checks and balances. Mr. Speaker, here's what you have to weigh at the end of the debate. First of all, what kind of pornography happens? On our side, we get a kind of pornography that is, at the very least, profit-driven, where they have individuals who are able to go to authorities in the cases where they are not being treated well. On our side, we get smaller studios that are able to operate outside the patriarchal structures that most amateur producers of pornography operate within. On their side, they get a system where they claim they have no pimps, but instead, the pimps are disguised by the terms your boyfriend or your husband, and on their side, they get a stunning lack of consent, translated and reflected in society as being far worse for workers, watchers, and everyone as a whole. I am so very proud to propose.
Here, I take that speaker for that speech. Now call on the deputy leader for opposition to move the next speech in the round. Here.
This is really tall. Mr. Speaker, I'm going to be focusing my speech on the comparative regulation between the mainstream industry and the self-regulated industry and why it's better on our side. Why is that where it's focused? Because most of what they give you on opening proposition stems from the regulation through to what kind of acts these actors will be performing, how they're being treated at home, and then how that ends up being emulated in the real world. One thing I won't be referencing is the entire market analysis we get on that side of the house. Why is that so? Because they simply mischaracterize how the pornographic market works. Why? They say the problem is you're cutting into our profit margins and therefore we need to cut costs. Why is that not true? Note that this is a free market in that they get money from clicks on the internet and advertisements as it is today. The porn market has changed drastically over the past 10 years with the internet already. The change they're discussing is one that has already happened in which you get more money for more clicks. Now, what does that mean? That means that same incentive that exists for those industries today to maintain a high standard of performance, to maintain a high standard of makeup, to maintain a high standard of, like, fantasy, are the same incentives that exist tomorrow. No, thank you. What does it not mean? It does not. It means that you're not cutting into someone else's share of the market by making them pay more, because they're not having to pay more to create this pornography. They're maintaining, no thank you, the same thing to create this pornography. Even if that were true, though, essentially what we're saying is that we're destroying a terrible market. We think that's probably an okay thing. The worst thing they get is that the actors are paid less, when note that under our side of the house, the actors can simply shift into porn 2.0, where they then control themselves, are the bosses of themselves, and are paid more than they would have been paid under these large industries when somebody else is taking 80%, 90% of the profits from this. So we think that's probably a good thing anyway. Now, 2 more points of rebuttal, and then no thank you, and then substantive. One, they assert, they talk about emulation. They say, listen, we see things, we contrive them as real, and therefore we emulate them in the real world. Here's the thing, though. Emulation separates into 2 issues. One is my willingness to emulate, on which we say there isn't actually a difference, because note, they give the example of reality TV. The fact remains that most people are more likely to emulate in their real life their favorite TV show character from Friends or from Buffy or whatever it is, than they are to emulate reality TV stars. The reason is because specifically the aura of imagination and of unrealistic expectations is what creates the drive to emulate this in the first place. So we say we get fewer people emulating on our side of the house in the first place. Secondly, on what it is that they're emulating, we say we get better expectations or more realistic things on our side of the house. Why is that true? They try and tell us they have all these incentives to go to the extreme when they're trying to create their own pornography. Note, though, that the extreme is exactly what doesn't cater to the widest possible audience. No, what caters to the widest possible audience is generally the more normative things. That's why it's called normative. Now, what does this mean for the actors themselves? Or for the viewers themselves? This means you don't get a few really negative things that you have in mainstream industry porn. The first thing you don't get is like those massively aggressive gang rape types of scenes, because that is not popular with viewership. We say that only still exists in porn, mainstream porn, because they can afford to also cater to bigger, to smaller sectorial groups that doesn't, no thank you, exist in porn 2.0. Note that they accept that the types of films created in porn 2.0 are likely to affect the types of films you get created in the mainstream industry. We say that's a big benefit on our side of the house. Secondly, you don't get things that are inherent to high-quality studio pornography that are exceptionally negative. What does that mean? You don't get specifically women whose body image is something that a regular woman can't meet, because any average Joe woman can get into regular porn 2.0, whereas she can't get accepted into the industry. You don't get makeup covering a woman's, I'm not even going to say what, that creates unrealistic expectations of how individuals act and how individuals look during the act of sex. We say that's a massive benefit on our side of the house, because you're not creating unachievable standards of beauty and unachievable standards of like acting, so to speak. Lastly, we say what you do get on our side of the house is the ability for substantially more disenfranchised minority individuals to take part in this pornographic industry. Because while black women do not appeal to most of society, they are generally pushed out of mainstream industry. This is untrue at the point where they can put themselves into it willingly. First,
Porn 2.0 simply replaces somewhat regulated pimps to coercion, trickery, and power imbalances to non-professional relationships that can never be policed and enforced.
Yes.
We got it. Cool. That brings me into my first my argument on regulation. Two parts to this argument. A, on why you can't regulate the actual market of porn, and secondly, on incentives versus pressure and internal regulation of porn 2.0. So why can't you regulate the actual market? Recognize that porn is a global market. It's global in two ways. One, it is taken through the internet globally, meaning porn created here is then viewed globally in lots of different countries. Secondly, though, the ability to create this pornography, to film it in like a dark basement somewhere, and then post it through a VPN, through a different country, anywhere on the internet, is massive. Where do you see this happening? Note the regulations that England recently tried to impose on shaping the way porn does. They got big backlash for that, but no, it didn't actually change the porn industry in England in any way, right? Because you can't actually regulate mainstream pornography. Where are the incentives you have here? Because they put to you that the woman is likely to be pressured into this. What we say is, porn 2.0 is not revenge porn. It is the replacement of revenge porn. It is the ability of individuals to watch porn that seems real, feels real to them, without having to watch revenge porn. Because the websites themselves are still regulated into the content that they're allowed to portray as to being consenting to being in this pornography. So we say we get two advantages. One, comparatively, we say husbands and boyfriends are less likely to pressure their wives or girlfriends into this act than business moguls preying on weak individuals that they find addicted to meth on the streets. It's not going to happen, but it's going to happen less. Secondly, we say the incentive and ability of an individual to regulate herself, to draw red lines. Sure, she'll be pushed into doing some things she'd probably rather not do, but no one can push her into doing things that break her own red lines. No one can push her into having sex without a condom, and these things are massively beneficial on our side.
I'm going to analyze specifically to you why we think that it is inherent to porn 2.0 to create more of a competition between the different producers, therefore to create more of a variety, more harmful things, and more of an impact. Secondly, I'm going to talk about where it's easier to regulate and why specifically when talking about the internet, and then about revenge porn and why it is porn 2.0 that created revenge porn to begin with, meaning that it wouldn't have existed without the internet. So let's start talking about the idea of competition. Because what is important to notice that once we had the internet, we had more and more people that go into production, most of the times offering their products for free. Now, what does this mean? It means that you have a lot of material out there, and if you want to succeed, if you want to get more clicks, what you have to do is you need to create an advantage for yourself. You need to be unique in some sort of way in order to have people coming to your site and not having people coming to the other site. Now, how can you do that? Since we are talking about local producers that, if they want to compete, don't have the kind of money necessary to go on against the big fishes, what they need to do is they need to create something else, something new, something that wasn't seen before. That is the thing that causes more and more self-producers to create the kind of extreme, more violent things, the kind of things that require you to have an act, not the makeup that costs money, the kind of thing that makes you have 3 guys on a girl, and so on. And we think that that this is very harmful. Why? Because we think that it normalizes by existence those kind of acts. Opt tries to tell you, but most people go for what is normal. But we say that once you go into a site, and it's a hub, right, and you have many different categories, you now see that there are more options that exist You now see that there is normative section, but you also see gangbang section, and you also see the BDSM section, and you see that the variety exists, meaning that in your head you become accustomed to it and you think, there must be more people doing that. Secondly, we say that there is an abuse of numbers here. Because you get to see a lot more content, you come to think that this is something normal because, there are many people that are into those kind of things. It is not a kink, it is something that is more normal just because I see that if in the past there were only 2 movies like that, now there are 17 movies like that. Or even more, meaning that people have a distorted idea now of what is normative and what is not, simply because it appears on the internet, so people would begin to doubt themselves and what is normal. See, they have more chances of actually accessing it. Why? Because it's free and it's one click away. It doesn't involve the kind of thing that we have when it's not on the internet, in which you have a mediation. We say that the mediation is very important in terms of expectation creation. Why? Because when you go to Blockbuster, you know that there is the guy that you will have to submit the videotape to. You know that you might be looked on and when you buy that kind of thing, meaning that you realize that this is something that isn't necessarily good, meaning that in your head you have some sort of dissonance between my enjoyment of it, but the fact that it's not real and the fact that people might look at me in a weird way because I buy it. We say that this is very good because it creates a balance between the entertainment value, but also remembering that this is not reality and this is not completely normative, the kind of acts that I'm going to see. On the internet, you don't have that because you do it in your room. No one watches you. No one can tell you what is right and what is wrong. You don't even have to tell someone in order to make sure what is normative and what is not. Meaning that people, especially young people, when they learn about sex, have no way of balancing out their expectation of what is real and what is not, what is normative and what is not, and so on. Now, next, they try to tell you the idea that because of this competition, now you don't have the pimps and you have more of a variety. But seriously, guys, what kind of world do you live in? The huge production companies still exist. They also exist on the internet, so they do both. Those guys continue. No, those guys continue on happening. But we say that while those guys still exist, then the people that are now doing that on their free will, you cannot really know whether they conceded or not, right? The independent people. Now, why is that? First, Prop tried to tell you that it's a matter of rules and regulation. We say that even the commercial sites have an interest of hiding the consent part. They cannot really check whether you conceded or not, right? So you can be a sex slave that will now have to click when your pimp tells you to on the button to say that you conceded and so on. So this doesn't matter a lot. B, we say that there are niche sites, right? You have the sites that regulate, but now you also have new websites that try to emulate this and you cannot control them. Now, even if you are the government and you want to create some sort of regulation, you cannot go into one's room. You cannot ask them what really happened. And we say that many times if someone didn't concede but is now ashamed of their actions, they will not report. They will not say, my boyfriend abused me into putting this web online, because they feel so ashamed of what they do, meaning that it's much harder to regulate, unlike our world in which you can simply find a studio, you can go to an actor and so on. Before I continue.
GovBench is continuously conflating Point 2.0 with internet porn in general. RedTube and all its categories existed far before they started adding verified user-generated content.
We say that this is internet porn in general, yes, this is emotion, but also specifically to the user-created content, our regulation point stands exactly because you as the government cannot go after. And thirdly, we say that this is something that seems more realistic. Why? A, because of the numbers that we have given, but B, because you see people that are like you and me. So they might be doing horrible acts, but they look like you because they don't have the website. Therefore, you are more likely to have the unrealistic expectations as the matter of the act now done by regular people. Meaning that you would now expect your girlfriend to do the same because the actress looks just like her, unlike the kind of regular regular actor. Now, about revenge porn, we say that this is created because of the internet, because it is so easy. Because now you can upload it as much as you want, and now you can create more of a shaming effect because you know that more people would watch it. In a regular industry, it won't happen. But for all of those reasons, we call you to support.
Here, I think that's speaker for that speech, and now I'll call on the member of opposition to deliver the next speech. Here.
Mr. Speaker, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the side proposition has constructed their case based on two huge, broad mischaracterizations. The first mischaracterization is that all Web 2.0 porn is snuff films. They're not. They're not. And the fact that they've based their case entirely on the issue that there's hard porn that's being generated in Web 2.0 site really kind of leaves aside the fact that big porn studios base a huge part of their income in hard porn as it stands. And in fact, despite this whole idea that we heard from the first government that that the pornographic industry has security standards that are much higher than Web.2 videos, the fact is that most porn stars have said that the way they have been treated by big studios, the things they have been forced to do in order to gain the bonuses and gain their income were far more oppressive than what we think might happen in personal videos and individually generated porn. And the way we think that is because basically people that upload their own videos is something that they're personally involved in. They will not do risky things, they will not go so far, they will say the safe word when they feel they do have to, because they're really involved in it and it's something that they own. And we feel basically in the side of a closing opposition that there's a huge part of this debate that has been left out, and that is of the individual, of the person that is involved in the making of personal porn. And we're going to talk about this and the pornography as a sexual expression of sexuality. So, the second mischaracterization I promised that they said is that, well, money makes everything. The reason there is a Web 2.0 to begin with is money, is that people want to make an income out of it. And we do not doubt that that probably is a reason. We sincerely doubt that this is the reason. It's not even an important reason. The reason people do this, the reason people upload videos in sites like Pornhub or Pornorama or RedTube is because they seek admiration. They want to have their stuff strutted out in the internet and read the comment section that says, guys, you're hot. I love this. I jacked off to it. Hi, guys. Hi, Mom. So, no, it's fine. The other thing that we heard from the side of government is that we should regret the collapse of the porn industry. We should regret all these poor porn executives that are strolling the roads and having nothing to eat, and they're walking around in shabby clothes. But no, because what they're saying in this collapse, no, madam, is that we see a market transformation. This was a free market to begin with. It was the freest kind of market. But what happens really right now in porn industries is that you have a shift from capital-oriented enterprises to a more social type of production. You have people doing it in their living rooms. They can show it on the web if they want to, gain money if they want to. But that's not the reason we should regret and go and protect and take the part of the porn industries as some benevolent giant. They never were. They were an oppressive structure, as throughout the speeches of the opposition we have stated repeatedly. Before I proceed to our extension, why pornography is a social expression of sexuality, yes.
Assuming but not conceding is the most benign, consensual, loving sex being uploaded, it doesn't deal with, one, the edging out of liberal porn, and two, shifting the baseline of what is profitable for the commercial porn industry.
See, I really find this, again, let me go back to my mischaracterization point, that I think that seeing that only Web 2.0 sites and Web 2.0 videos are aggressive or are violent kind of misses the fact that the Web 2.0 is where the feminist porn kind of began from. This is the reason. No. This is basically porn in general is a wide social activity, one would call it, and it has all the aspects that social activity has. It's very colorful, and we understand that people that there may be some violent aspects to it, but we believe that people are responsible and mature enough to handle it on themselves, and we believe that studios do a far worse job at it. Now, off to our arguments. First of all, let's examine why is it so popular. Why porn in generally, Web 2.0 porn is so popular. And we've seen some aspects of it. The thing is that these guys that you see in the video are people just like you. They're not well trained. They're not artificially enhanced. They're not well endowed. They're not false scenarios about fixing the photocopier, and they're not well choreographed in a directional way. They're just people in their living room or bathroom doing sex. And this is something believable. This is what really happened at some point in the professional porn industry, no madam, is that porn stopped being believable. People stopped seeing it as something that you can relate to. And if you don't relate to, if you don't see Audrey Hollander or James Dean or Jenna Jameson as someone you can really identify with as a protagonist. But the thing is, for porn, it is important to be believable. And why is it important? Because humans, we are social beings, and we get our cues from our social surrounding. The thing is that the first government said quite interesting, it kind of encourages voyeurism. We kind of see it in an entirely different way, that humans are naturally voyeurs, that the way we behave, the way we eat, the way we talk to each other, the way we behave in a social setting, these are things that happen in a very social way. We take our cues from other people. No, thank you. So the thing is that society and religion have created taboos around these things, that we cannot freely discuss our sexuality, and we cannot freely discuss the way we behave when having sex. And this is why we see basically that the Web 2.0 porn goes, because it differs widely from the things we've accustomed to seeing in professional porn, and we find it more normal, find it more relatable. We find things that we can identify and can underline and accept our sexual tastes as being something other people may like or may not like. We're not restrained in this, and we find this to be very, very liberating. And we find this liberating also because it adds another layer. The thing is that the uploader gains admiration and social acceptance in a way by putting up porn sites. Because everyone wants a type of admission that what they're doing is good. And porn, Web 2.0 offers that in a very liberating way. So this is the reason why we don't regret at all the fact that porn Web 2.0 was created. We find it a perfect acceptable social expression of sexuality, and therefore we call you to agree with us. Thank you.
Final good speech in the round. Here.
Ready? Okay. Honorable judges, since this is a regret motion, we need to ask ourselves which world is better? A world when porn 2.0 exists, or a world where it doesn't exist? Specifically when you have the context of the fact that regular porn already exists in the internet as well. That is why when closing opposition come and talk to you about how they hear people, they hear the testimonies of people who come from the porn industry and tell about the horrible things that they have been forced to do by the producers, etc., etc. This is something that still exists today in the world in which porn 2.0 also exists. So we don't think that porn 2.0 actually helped in solving or improving the bad things that regular porn industry already has today. So this is a huge chunk of side opposition that's off the table, because in reality we see it didn't actually have this effect. Second thing regarding what we heard from the previous speaker, we heard this analysis about how people upload these videos in Porn 2.0 not because of money, but just because they want to feel nice. They want people to give them a like and give them the flattering comments about how good they look. Now, look, here's the thing. Even if some people are doing it for this reason, and some people might feel better because they got this like on their sex movie that they uploaded, we still think it's not worth all the horrible things that this thing has brought into our world. We tell you specifically how, and this is our extension that was not properly engaged with. We tell you how the rise of porn actually creates a horrible competition that makes the regular porn industry worse. We show you how now people who are imitating and learning from the porn actually are even more confused because exactly why all the wonderful benefits that they want to talk about, variety, etc., already can happen with the regular market without Porn 2.0 happening. Third thing, they tell us that this actually brings down the taboo regarding sex and sex movies, etc. A, we never really got a sufficient explanation. Why is this true, that this is what's happening? Because B, like my partner told you already, people are still watching this porn at home, right? We don't sit among with friends and saying, hey, did you check out my last video? How awesome was I? Did you see my girlfriend, etc.? That doesn't happen in reality, right? Third thing we tell you, even if it would have happened, that only means we're becoming less critic towards this industry, and it's all the wrong things that are inherently involved with it, and we think that in this side opposition failed. So let's answer three main questions in this debate, okay? Let's talk first of all about the influence that Porn 2.0 has on the viewers. As my partner and I, we get already from opening government the idea that no, everybody can enter, everybody can take part, and this is an opposition thinks that this is just a wonderful thing. What my partner comes and explains to you is that exactly because the click analysis brought to you by opening opposition about the interest that people have in order to get views and to get people to click and to view, meaning if you want people to view what you're uploading, you need to show something new. You need to show something that will be more arousing, something that will seem even more extreme or more special than what was out there from the first place. And we're saying examples for this is exactly like having sex without a condom. Now we have the illusion of consent, right? Because the two partners can consent to have this kind of sex, and now you see it up there. Why is this so bad? Because A will tell you, when you have so many categories and so many movies in all these different categories, it actually makes people believe that this is something that's much more acceptable, that this is something that's much more common and normal, and that everybody is doing. It creates a distorted picture of reality and what people actually like and what people actually do. What does this cause? As my partner tell you, it causes the fact that when now people, especially in a world where unfortunately children learn and people learn most about sex from the porn industry, it causes a misunderstanding about what exactly am I expected of, what exactly should I do and how should I do it, what can I or can I not demand from my girlfriend, what kind of pressure can I or can I not apply on my partner, okay? And we're saying that the fact that the porn now is with people who look like you and me and don't look like these artificial players only make artificial actors only makes all this worse. Because if that girl looks exactly like my girlfriend, that guy looks exactly like me, then yes, it's perfectly okay for me to demand let's have sex without a condom, because everybody's doing it, because look how popular it is, because it's so much more fun. Here, this is what I'm learning now from this porn. We think that this is a horrible thing. We don't think that opposition dealt with it. And that alone, proposition wins this debate. Before I continue, sure, opening engage.
For years, participants in pornography have been both figuratively and literally raped by producers and executives. Why is edging them out of the picture not a massive
Thank you. A, like I said in the beginning of my speech, we don't actually see that changing because of Porn 2.0, so you lose that. But second thing, let's get to the second question. Does 2.0 actually break social structures or not? Because we think that the opposition are kind of living in a fantasy land where they're saying, oh, it's two consensual, two adults who consented, this is all wonderful and lovey-dovey. They're forgetting exactly the social norm that already exists today about who is usually the one who is the initiative, who wants the sex, who is the one who brings the idea to film ourselves having sex, etc. Who does all these things usually? Men, okay? Most women are not the ones who are the active ones to come and to upload these videos. That is why my partner gives you several reasons. A, we tell you, even in ops world, the pimp can force the prostitute to click on yes, I agree to upload this video. Second thing we tell you, the element of shame. When me as a girl, I'm ashamed of what my boyfriend did to me. Even if I originally agreed to upload this movie, now it's even harder for me to take it down. Now it's harder for me to go and complain, to say I regret what I have done because the way that other people look at me. Unlike the studios, where it's easy to figure out who is the studio, who is the producer, and to sue them specifically when they have done wrong things. Last thing we tell you is that this is exactly the thing that created revenge porn. This is what made it easy for people to film their girlfriends and upload it the moment that they didn't like their girlfriends and anymore. We didn't get any answers on this issue also. Last thing, if you want to talk to me about variety, about different ethnicities that now get a platform in porn, we're saying take a look at porn on regular porn site. It already happens today because there's a market, because there are interest, because the regular porn companies want to make money and to appeal to all these crowds. So it wasn't necessary to get this variety for 2.0. So for all these reasons, we're so happy to regret.
Here, for that speech, and then now Paul will help me off and to deliver the final speech in the round. Here.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We're closing this debate, and we heard some really interesting things from both sides. So this debate basically boils up to two major points, like social reasons and moral reasons why we support the amateur porn 2.0 porn. First of all, what we already said as an opposition side is that it enhances the free expression of oneself. It helps you identify with common people. It makes it more believable than the porn sites, the commercial porn sites. And you don't have to be a bloated silicone blonde girl to be believable or to be feel sexual about yourself. So basically, free expression of oneself and sexuality is part and really important. Is really important aspect of identity and free expression, like other constitutional rights. And it's really important to feel good about yourself. So basically, commercial porn sites are trying not to support this free expression of oneself, and it's really difficult to identify yourself and to feel yourself, to make yourself feel really nice about your body image, or basically with all the standards that commercial porn sites are trying to promote. Another really huge aspect, and as my partner already mentioned, is that pornography is a free social expression of your sexuality. And we get all our social behavior from our parents, from our schools, as we are growing up, like eating manners or greeting one another. So basically, society standards influence ourselves, and it is influenced all these years in how we express each other. Thank you. So society structures, like in modern times, are based and formed during all these years from laws, constitutions, religion, etc. So all this stuff have already suppressed sometimes what is natural, like sexuality. And by all this means, we're saying that suppressing the expression of sexuality is a byproduct of all these years of laws and social structures and religions. So porn, free porn, amateur porn, enhances and supports the free expression of your sexuality because sexual expression is a really huge part of who you are. And they already told us in that part that you have to go to all these horrible extremes and do all these horrible things in order to get more clicked, and by that way you would feel imaginary, you would feel more sexual liberated. But that is wrong, because even if you go to extremes, even though you have to compete with another uploader of amateur porn, it is okay because it is made by your own free will, no matter how that free will it is formed. It is okay because it is formed by all those years since you've grown up, and it is made by your own free will, and it's not like money oriented. So basically, what amateur porn does is that it hands your free sexuality, and it helps you to be free and to be free about your sexuality. It defines who you are, and with commercial porn, these cues and behaviors and sexual behavior is based more on financial profit and what is hot in the market, and it does not enhance your free expression of sexuality.
Okay, thank you so much. Right, so by that logic, commercial studios produce abusive or unrealistic pornography because of consumers and profitability. So how do these demands for abusive or unrealistic porn change with Web Porn 2.0?
We don't have to change something that is natural. I mean, if you want to be violent with your partner, and your partner is consent in that and enhance that, it is okay, because many retired porn actors have already declared that they were pressed by their managers, by what we call more refined pimps than in the street, and with a bonus, with extra money, you can do things that really you're not consented. So money and economics like basically regulate the world. So if you have a bonus to go to extremes that you are not really concerned about, and it depends like on your career, it is a bad thing, right? And this is what commercial porn supports. But amateur porn, anything extreme or horrible that you can do, or even if you do it to compete with one another, it is okay because it's based in your own free will. You want to go to these extremes. Even though you can gain admiration, it's not a bad thing. Everyone needs to feel good about themselves. So basically, it's a free expression of sexuality, and you do something arousing, but you do it because you like it. You do it because this is who you are, and this is what we promote. So basically, what opposition said is that amateur porn is a free social expression of your sexuality. It helps you identify who you are, and you can be that guy or you can be that girl next door, so you don't have to create this distorted shape or body images. And it's a free social activity that you change your opinion or your sexuality or your free expression of sexuality with another human being. It's a huge social activity, another financially money-oriented activity. And thank you very much.